Hello, my name is Jamie Smith, and I'm a scientist at the Southern California Coastal Water Research Project. And I'll be presenting on the development process and components of California's framework and strategy for freshwater harmful algal bloom monitoring. I'm pleased to do so on behalf of myself, Martha Satula, Keith Gregson, and Marissa Van Dyke. So why monitor for HABs? Well, harmful algal blooms are a cross-cutting water quality issue. They impact multiple beneficial uses, including drinkable, fishable, swimmable uses, aquatic life, and tribal and cultural uses of waterways. Harmful algal blooms are on the rise in California, as they are in many parts of the country, and they're anticipated to get worse with eutrophication and climate change. And so beneficial uses are really at risk, especially as we anticipate that these events will be more common. And in California, we have a difficult time really quantifying the impacts at this current time on our core beneficial water uses. In many places, we don't even understand fully which HAB species and toxins are our biggest issues. And part of this is because harmful algal blooms present a really unique ambient monitoring challenge. They're unlike many other contaminants in that they're biologically derived. Blooms can be ephemeral or long-lasting. They can occur all throughout the year. In California, we often see our peak occurrence in the summer, as in many places in the United States. They occur over a diverse environment, and so in California, we see them all throughout the state, as you can see from this figure showing incident reports in the summer of 2020, and we see them in all different types of water bodies, reservoirs, lakes, rivers, streams, and we've even documented instances of transport of cyanotoxins down watersheds into estuaries and coastal environments. And so California has taken some major steps in recent years to address this issue. In 2019, the governor signed a bill that mandated monitoring of freshwater HABs in California. The bill mandates that monitoring assessment occur at the state, regional, and water body scale with the goals of tracking the status and trends and identifying the water bodies most at risk. So with the signing of the bill, the Water Board embarked to develop a framework to develop their monitoring program. And so with this framework, we identified a number of key objectives. The first being the establishment of management questions. So as I mentioned, the bill and the water boards wish to address status and trends, as well as drivers of freshwater HABs in the state across multiple scales. The framework should provide a monitoring approach that is protective of the 5 core beneficial uses that we identified as impacted by HABs. We prioritize the water body types that we've seen freshwater HABs to be an issue. So that is pretty much all of our major water body types: lakes, reservoirs, ponds, rivers and streams, and cyanotoxins at the land-sea interface. And we wanted our framework to utilize 3 different monitoring approaches. So approaches led by the State Water Board to conduct targeted or routine surveys at regional and statewide scales, a partner-led program that would empower more local entities like NGOs, tribal governments, citizen scientists, and others to conduct monitoring at the individual water body scale, and remote sensing approaches which offer unprecedented spatial and temporal resolution. And so to do this, our approach was to first assemble a technical advisory committee. We purposefully assembled a committee that was diverse, that included state, local, and federal agencies, scientists from those groups, as well as academic and research institute scientists, representatives from tribal governments, and non-governmental organizations. So in conjunction with the TAC, we developed framework elements for each of the 3 approaches, which involved selecting the key indicators, survey design, and options. We developed a number of different framework options, which are all spelled out in the framework document, the data systems and decision support systems that underpin those, and wherever possible, leveraging opportunities in order to most efficiently use resources. And then that developed a number of different options and approaches. And so the Water Board took all of the framework elements and developed a strategic implementation plan and schedule for those elements. And so in this figure here, we're kind of showing the comprehensive vision that the framework developed for FHAB monitoring in the state that involves, monitoring and partnerships across entities and agencies using a number of approaches that are all underpinned by the infrastructure that needs to be developed for the program, that then kind of results in the monitoring program products, which is the assessment of status, trends, and drivers, and eventually predictive models, which can then inform management actions that ultimately protect our beneficial uses. And the core principles that underpinned all of these framework elements were, of course, beneficial use protection, open data, tribal partnerships, and leveraging and partnering with existing programs and frameworks wherever applicable. And so with this comprehensive framework, the Water Board then took the approach to put the strategy into the document. And what the strategy really was laying out all of the different approaches that were developed with the technical advisory committees and parsing them into these 6 categories. At the onset of the framework, the Water Board did not have a budget for how much they wanted to spend on this program. So we devised to do this in a relative fashion of things that were lower resource and higher resource, and then things that should be implemented immediately in the near term and long term, because some of these elements, things like predictive model, were visionary and required previous elements to be in place. And so the Water Board then came up with 6 core strategic recommendations. The first being developing and implementing an FHAB partner monitoring program. And so that is one of the highest priorities. That's why it's number 1. And that is a program that is envisioned to have common SOPs used across the state by all different stakeholders and coordinated by the water boards. The other recommendations include strengthening the existing use of remote sensing in the state, implementing targeted field surveys focused on protection of human health, conducting focused drivers assessment in high-risk water bodies, strengthening the incident response protocols that are already in place, and unifying them with the other elements of the strategy. And then, of course, trying to integrate all of these elements into water board programs, because HABs are such a cross-cutting water quality issue. And so in this process, we kind of came up with what we felt were best practices for program establishments. And the first being, of course, you need to recognize and understand the unique challenges of monitoring freshwater harmful algal blooms and develop approaches that are science-based to make sure to adequately address status and trends, or to assess rather. Also, wherever possible, seek out partnerships and work at the very beginning to building collaboration across agencies and stakeholders, again, because HABs are such a cross-cutting issue. It was great to pursue multiple approaches. There's no need to really focus on, do it all remote sensing or all in situ sampling. There's so many great approaches that can work together. And so working to pursue approaches multiple approaches that can all work together to address the key management questions that we seek to address with the program. Also, wherever possible, because everybody has set resources, identify opportunities for leveraging with existing programs. We spent a fair amount of time in the development process talking to other groups, learning about their programs, and understanding where HABs monitoring might be a leveraging opportunity with their existing operations. And last, decide on the priorities of the program, and then implement your strategy accordingly. So by prioritizing, in this case, we prioritize recreational health, as that the program should very first and foremost address that, because that was the biggest need. And then all of the decisions were made with that in mind. So with that, I thank you for your attention, and I look forward to taking any questions during the question and answer panel.